This LOS is explain how technical analysts use cycles. Technical analysis tools. Now we're going to turn our attention to cycles. Many technicians use various observed cycles to predict future movements in security prices. These cycles include Kondratiev Waves, 18-year cycle, Decennial Patterns, and the U.S. presidential cycle. Kondratiev Wave. The longest of the widely recognized cycles was identified by Kondratiev in the 1920s. Kondratiev was an economist in the Soviet Union who suggested that Western economies have a 54-year cycle. He traced cycles from the 1780s to the time he published his theory in the 1920s, and the economic depression of the 1930s was consistent with the cycle he identified. His theory was mainly tied to economic cycles and commodity prices, but cycles can also be seen in the prices of equities during the time of his work. The 18-year cycle. The 18-year cycle is interesting because 3 18-year cycles make up the longer 54-year Kondratiev wave. The 18-year cycle is most often mentioned in connection with real estate prices, but it can also be found in equities and other markets. Decennial Pattern. The decennial pattern is the pattern of average stock market returns based on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, broken down on the basis of the last digit in the year. Years ending with a 0 have had the worst performance, and years ending with a 5 have been by far the best. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was up every year ending in a 5 from 1885 until 1995, but it declined 0.6% in 2005. Presidential cycle. This cycle in the United States connects the performance of the Dow Jones Industrial Average with presidential elections. In this theory, years are grouped into categories on the basis of whether they were election years or the first, second, or third year following an election. The third year is the year prior to the next election. The third year shows the best performance. In fact, the Dow Jones Industrial Average experienced a positive return in every pre-election year from 1943 through 2007. One explanation for this outcome is that with so many politicians up for re-election, they inject stimulus into the economy in an attempt to prove their chances to be re-elected. Election years are also usually positive years for the stock market, but with less consistency. Post-election years and the so-called midterm years have the worst performance. So we'll do a couple of quick practice questions. Kondratiev concluded in the 1920s that since the 1780s, Western economies have generally followed a cycle of how many years? A, 18, B, 54, or C, 76? Okay, this question is extremely easy because we've just been looking at the slides, but you can see if it's been a couple of months since you've studied it, these are the type of factoids that you really want to be able to call on the exam. Lots of memorization for the CFA Level 1 exam. So in this case, B is correct. Kondratiev was an economist in the Soviet Union who suggested that Western economies had a 54-year cycle. So you just have to remember NK54. Again, this question should be fairly easy because we're just looking at the slide. But again, if it's been a couple of months since you went over your notes, you might have some trouble recalling. But again, it's just straight out facts memorization. So based on the decennial pattern of cycles, how would the Dow Jones Industrial Average in the year 2015 compare with the return in 2020? A, the return would be better. B, the return would be worse. Or C, the answer cannot be determined because the theory does not apply to both of those years. Okay, A is correct. The decennial pattern theory states that years ending with a 5 will have the best performance of any of the 10 years in a decade, and that those ending with a 0 will have the worst. Again, just some factoids that you need to memorize. Another quick practice question. According to the U.S. presidential cycle theory, the Dow Jones Industrial Average has the best performance during which year? A, the presidential election year itself. B, the first year following a presidential election. Or C, the third year following a presidential election. This question wasn't too difficult. Remember, in the U.S., presidential elections are held every 4 years. So in the third year following a presidential election, that's the year before another election. So as the text said, C is correct. It's the third year. A possible reason for the superior performance in the third year is that the U.S. presidential election occurs together with a number of other elections in a 4-year cycle, so politicians desiring to be re-elected inject money into the economy in the 3rd year to improve their chances of winning in the following year. And one last final practice question to finish this LOS. What is a major problem with long-term cycle theories? A, the sample size is small. B, the data are usually hard to observe. Or C, they occur over such a long period of time that they are difficult to discern. A is correct. Long-term cycles require many years to complete. Thus, not many cycles are available to observe, so the sample size is small. And that's the last slide for this LOS. Thank you.